William Nylander is the guy with no contract for next year in the NHL, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are obviously in a position where they want to bring him back. So, seeing as this is kind of an interesting topic right now, and this will directly feed in to how the team is forced to manage itself in the future, I wanted to talk about it here. What is Nylander worth? What kind of contract should we be expecting him to receive? And there are two options here. Obviously, it's always two options, isn't it? The first option is the full-out 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, sign him to as long as a contract as he's willing to accept and give him the big bucks. That's option A. Option B is the shorter 2, 3, 4-year deal, which is a prove-it deal, which is a show us what your true value is before we give you the big bucks. Either we give him the big money now, or we give him the big money a few years down the line. But there are questions that arise, in particular for Nylander, within these two cases. Obviously, there are pros and cons for each, so I wanted to talk about that here. If we signed him to a long-term deal, what do you think the value would be? If you say 7, this is where a lot of people kind of get a little bit weary. And the reason for that is because if we lock up Nylander to a 7-year deal, 7 by 7, $49 million contract for 7 years, okay, what exactly is the problem with that? Well, the problem with that, in the eyes of some, is the fact that Nylander hasn't necessarily been a guy that exhibits that amount of talent. And don't get me wrong, he's a talented player, he's definitely going to get better. But is it worth it to say that he is definitively going to be worth that? And the reason there's an argument that opposes that is because, well, okay, we saw it. In the playoffs, Nylander wasn't necessarily the best, and in these past 2 seasons, he got 20 goals, yes, he got 60 points, yes, but he's playing with some of the best players in the league. And that's an argument that can definitely be made here. Also is the argument that, hey, wait a minute, look at David Pastrnak. Pasternak's only making $6.6 million until 2023. So, if you take a look at things in that respect, Pastrnak, who had 80 points last season and 34 goals plus in the past 2 seasons, is totally a name that could be defined as quote-unquote better than Nylander. Even going up to a 6.5. Would it be accurate to say that William Nylander is worth the same amount of money as David Pastrnak? Some people might say yes, some people might say no, but this is the discussion that I'm trying to bring up here. The fact that William Nylander has played with such good players his whole career, which brings up the question of his numbers being accurate representations of his skill level. In fact, he got 20 goals the past 2 seasons. So is that, along with his good playmaking ability with good players around him, enough of an incentive to give him the same amount of money, if not more money, than David Pastrnak? And then there's also the argument of the short-term deals as well. He's obviously going to improve, right? He's 22 years old. He's obviously going to improve as he grows. So, is it the right idea to take a look at this and say, okay, we're going to give you a short 2-3-year deal, and by the time that deal is up, we'll have an accurate gauge of what your actual skill level is upon reaching your prime, and then we'll give you the money then? Is that worth it? Because the Leafs still need to sign all the other guys too, and Nylander is the first of the triumvirate of young forwards to come in to get his contract signed. And if we do a bridge deal, if it goes to a point where 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, that's when Nylander is getting another contract, this could be a recipe for disaster. And it could put the team in a financially unstable situation. I know the cap's going up. I know that it's likely that the other 2 guys, Marner and Matthews, are going to get raises too. So there's a long-term game that really needs to be visualized in giving Nylander a short-term deal, a bridge deal, a prove-it deal. So do you go back to that long-term deal? Let's just say that if Dubas is able to get Nylander for like $5 million over the next 8 years, absolute steal, win-win, fantastic. But obviously, you know, there are some sources out there claiming that Nylander is asking for 7. So, yeah, you gotta take that into consideration as well. Overall, Nylander, from what he's shown, as a player who can get 20 goals, 60-point seasons, I think it's accurate and that it's fair to say that he could be given $5.75 to $6 million. If you go over 6 a little bit, it's kind of stretching the boundaries for me because of the whole Pasternak thing and all that, but at the same time, he still is going to get better. And by how much, nobody can tell. So being able to say, okay, 5.5 to 7, that's an accurate range for what Nylander will project to be as he grows as a player. That's fair. That's totally fair. But to answer the question on what kind of contract he should get, man, I'm happy I'm not Kyle Dubas right now because things are going to be kind of interesting as the Leafs go forward. William Nylander, how much he's worth? Comment down what you think below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Plus, and Gaming, and bye.